Welcome to How to Fit Meditation into Your Life no matter how busy you are. I'm Stephen Scattini and you are on youandyourmind.com. So my job today is to help you understand that meditation is not some sort of obscure, inaccessible, mystical practice which you can never really master. On the contrary, meditation is something extremely simple. It's very straightforward. The fact that it's simple is why we have so much difficulty. And the explanations we have for it and the complications which we ascribe to it, the way we describe it as being something very difficult, this is a sort of defense mechanism which we use to explain why we're not actually doing it every day. You see, we all know there are good reasons to meditate. It improves your focus, your emotional well-being. It develops mental clarity, increases empathy. And even if you're not into all those good soft qualities, it boosts your immune function, it reduces your anxiety, it aids your heart rate and blood pressure, promotes deep sleep. Meditation is good for us. It's as simple as that. And generally, we know it. Everybody who's here presumably knows it, otherwise you wouldn't be here. The reason that we don't meditate is exactly what we're here to do today, which we're here to understand that and to decide how we're going to move forward. So I've got some explanations here about meditation, about how it works, and about what it really is. And I've been doing this for a long time, and I've found a method that works for me. Now, this is very important. People often ask, what is the correct way to meditate? Or what sort of beliefs should I hold? And the whole point of meditation, as far as I can see, as far as I've experienced, is to figure it out for yourself. If you don't figure it out for yourself, you don't get the benefits. So this is something very, very personal. However, there are certain things that we can say about meditation which are relatively generalized or universal. Now, before we go any further, I want to look at our main tool, which is mindfulness. I'm sure you've already heard of mindfulness, and I've put down a little definition, if you like, of it. Conscious, present attention to immediate experience. That's basically it. And I've added something else on, but let's just look at that. Conscious, present attention to immediate experience. What is that exactly? Why do you have to sit cross-legged in a quiet room in order to practice mindfulness? Well, the short answer is you don't. Mindfulness is something you do with your mind. This needs to be said, I suppose. It's got nothing to do with what position you're sitting in, what clothes you're wearing, what sort of temple or meditation hall you're in. It's all about you and your mind. Now I've added something here. Conscious present attention to immediate experience without getting caught up in shoulds and shouldn'ts. And the reason I added that is because that's exactly what we do. We do get caught up in shoulds and shouldn'ts. We're constantly, what can I say? We're constantly hobbling ourselves by thinking, should I be doing this? Shouldn't I be doing it that way? Am I doing it right? Am I doing it wrong? Mindfulness is incredibly simple. It's one of the most naked aspects of your mind. You're simply paying attention. If ever you've looked at a baby in a crib, looking at a mobile above or something that's being dangled in front of him, you see these wide open eyes and this incredible attention. There's very little judgment there because the baby doesn't know anything. But as we grow up, we start judging everything that we do. And we're taught to judge ourselves in that way too. So one of the key qualities of mindfulness is to be able to step back from that judgment and be impartial. It's a lot like the scientific attitude, the empirical attitude, where you're simply observing without interfering, without letting your judgment get in the way. And as easy as it is to say that, it can be tricky to do. Mindfulness is the basis of everything we do, because what you're trying to do is deal with the fact of being overwhelmed. We're overwhelmed every day. Life is overwhelming. We talk about a time when it wasn't like that. We remember before the internet, before email, before whatever. There's always some mythical past where things were better. But for once, I think we've reached a point in our society, and this applies all around the world, in all modern societies, where the pace of life is crazy, and we are constantly overwhelmed by detail. And there's really only one solution to that, and it's mindfulness. And I'm not saying that because I teach mindfulness, but because there really isn't anything else which can combat that fragmentation of our attention. This is how we focus again. This is how we learn to see clearly, and then taking that tool, taking that clarity, and then applying it to ourselves. The goal is to see ourselves in real time, how we work, how our minds work, how we deal with stress, how we deal with being overwhelmed, and what we can do to change our reactivity. That's what mindfulness is for. That's the whole point of this website, of You and Your Mind, to try and cultivate that and to give you the tools you need. Now, this is something that's not really spoken about very much, but I think for anybody who's spent any part of their lives meditating, this becomes really sort of obvious that there are two types of meditation. There's formal meditation, which we all know about, where you sit cross-legged and you have ideally a perfect posture, and your mind is quiet, the room is quiet, there's very little distraction, and probably you're putting most of your energy simply into concentration, just keeping your mind fixed, letting go of passing thoughts, letting go of feelings. At any rate, whatever your experience is, this is generally what meditation teachers tell you to do when you're sitting in that situation. For me, I call that practice. In fact, everybody calls it practice, the practice of meditation. But I also mean something more, that it's practice in the sense that it's not quite the real thing. Because what are we meditating for? What's the point? Is it just so we can sit there in complete silence and withdraw from the world? There's not much point in that. The point is so that when we get up, we are calmer, we're clearer, more collected, better able to deal with the real thing, with the fact that the world is overwhelming. Every minute is flying at us, and we have to find a way to deal with it. Live meditation is the real thing, and it happens when you get up in the morning, you make breakfast, you eat, you go to work, you look after your family, you deal with problems. These are the situations where we want to find the meditative mind. If we don't, we get caught up in automaticity. We're carried away by our we simply react to what happens. We're not present. We're not paying attention. And that's when the feeling of overwhelmed comes in, okay? The overwhelming nature of our situation or our environment is one thing. It means that there's lots of things happening at once, more than I can actually do. But the overwhelming feeling is the sense of, oh my God, I can't cope. I'm broken. This has broken my ability to respond. And that is what we can change. We're not going to make the world less stressful. We can make ourselves less stressed. And the point is not to say that one sort of meditation is right and the other is wrong. In fact, they're both essential. They both need each other. Neither of them really have much meaning without the other. However, you can do formal meditation alone, and it may not lead to very much. But if you do live meditation, if you practice live meditation, then it always leads to something because it's happening in the real world. It's momentous. It has consequences that will bear fruit for you, sometimes in the very, very short term. So let's look in a little more detail about what this means. Formal meditation, or you can call it traditional meditation, or you can say what people think of when you say the word meditation. And here they are, sitting cross-legged, looking at a wall, quiet, silent, focusing on the body, feelings, thoughts. And the job they have here, if they're sitting for an extended time, is to battle distraction and sleepiness, and also to deal with boredom. This, in my experience, is an incredibly valuable thing to do. It's really worthwhile. Formal meditation gives you the basic tool in the easiest possible circumstance. Because it's quiet, because there's nothing to distract you, it's easier to appreciate what you're trying to do and to understand the difficulty of it. You start to see your mind in a new way. And for a lot of us, it seems that the mind is more distracted than ever when we start meditating. In fact, it's just that we're noticing it more than we ever did before. Sitting in silence reduces distraction. Focusing on the body, feelings, and thoughts takes you inside and makes you an observer of what is actually happening. You're battling distraction and sleepiness because after the initial honeymoon, if you like, of sitting and meditating and feeling very wonderful, then distractions do appear. The mind, as they say, has a mind of its own. You find it zipping all over the place and not staying on the object of concentration. Or, once you get really comfortable at sitting cross-legged like that, you start falling asleep. Neither of those approaches are meditation. The middle way between distraction and sleepiness is a state of calm alertness where you're seeing what's going on in your mind. But you're also perhaps suffering from boredom. If you're not suffering from boredom, then you probably just have to look a little further, because the usual pace at which our mind operates is so fast that when we sit down, it's inevitable. We're going to feel like something's wrong. Something needs to keep moving. And that's the mind. The mind keeps moving even though we sat down. It's got its own momentum. The momentum of the mind is a huge topic, which we will certainly be addressing again in these webinars. So that's formal meditation. Now, active meditation. And by this I mean bringing the meditative state of mind into any daily situation, anyone. The only caveat being that some situations, of course, are much easier than others. So you'll be more successful in some situations than others. But first of all, let's look at the quality of active meditation. It's the same state of mindfulness, okay? Present in any moment, not just a moment when you actually sit down and cross your legs. It's something that affects others around you. You see the effects. If you're quiet, if you're more observant, if you're more responsive with people, that changes the relationships that you have with them, and they begin to notice it. Maybe not consciously, but certainly subconsciously. So there are different consequences for active meditation. You're not sitting alone, isolating yourself. On the contrary, you're seeing your mind in action. Mindfulness means that you are aware of what is going on in your mind in the present moment, even though you're also aware of what's going on around you. Now, that might sound really complicated, but the fact is we do it all the time. We multitask naturally. And meditation does not mean that you cannot multitask. It means that a major part of that mind has to be tasking on looking at your own feelings, thoughts, and body. There are immediate benefits to active meditation. You see it as soon as you take that breath, as soon as you see yourself in that situation where you're beginning to feel overwhelmed. You stop, you take one breath, and already that gives you clarity. It gives you calmness. It enables you to accept the overwhelming nature of the situation without feeling overwhelmed. You start to put things in perspective, and maybe you say, well, there are things that I can do and there are things that I simply can't do, and that's that. Real-world learning. When you practice mindfulness look at this picture, in an office environment, when you're dealing with people, in your family, in any situation, there are usually people around, and most of what we do in the day is involved or taking part in some sort of relationship. Even if the other person isn't there, we're thinking in terms of what we're going to do and how we speak with other people. When we're mindful in this way, we see ourselves and how we behave in these situations, then we're learning very deeply about ourselves, which is the purpose of meditation. When we see deep into ourselves, and I mean this in the most practical way you can imagine, when we really see our motives, the way we speak to people, why we speak to people in that way, and we start to burrow down, we begin to understand the layers of complication that we put over our experience. And we begin to let them go. And with that letting go comes a great simplicity and clarity, which is the real benefit of meditation. So once again, I want to underline this, that I'm not saying that active meditation is good and formal meditation is bad. Far from it. Formal meditation gives you the basic tools in an ideal environment. So it makes it much easier to practice those first sessions of breath awareness. Mindfulness of the breath is, well, here, let's try it. You've probably done it before, but you can never do it too much. Make yourself comfortable, relaxed. Allow your breath to come and go naturally. And place your attention on the breath. Watch the breath rise and fall in your chest. It doesn't matter if it's long or short. What matters is that you watch it. Right now, the point of this is not your breath, it's your attention. And I just want your attention on the breath, no matter what's happening. And just watch yourself. And expand that into your body. Feel the chest expanding and contracting. Try and let the exhale go on for just a little longer, down into your abdomen. And pause for just a fraction of a moment between the exhale and the inhale. Where is your mind? Where is your attention right now? It doesn't matter if it's gone, just bring it back to the breath. Don't be upset. This is the way it goes. You lose your attention, you regain it. You lose it again, you regain it. It's a matter of practice. There's no magic pill, there's no formula, just practice. Keep your attention on the breath. Keep your attention on the breath just for a few more seconds and answer this one question to yourself. How do you feel right now? Again, there's no right answer or wrong answer. It's a matter of observing. How do you feel? Just say it in a word or two to yourself, just so you know. And take a breath and relax. Okay. I'm just going to take a minute here to say that finally I've figured out how to see these questions. So some of you were having connection questions at the beginning, and I think you've solved them. I hope so. If not, please send me another question. Talk, yes, from Montreal, from Norway, from California, from Australia. Wow, what time is it there? Anyway, just to know that you can ask your questions and I will get to them at the end. So far, what we've seen is that there are two types of meditation. There's traditional or formal meditation where we literally take a form, and then there's active meditation where we simply bring the mindful mentality into our everyday life. And the two work together. One is not much use without the other. In particular, there's no point in sitting meditation if we don't bring that attentiveness into everyday situations. Now, active meditation, as you must have guessed, is a lot more complicated. It's harder. Clearly, it's easier to concentrate when you're in a quiet place. But equally clearly, it's very beneficial to be able to meditate in a stressful place. But we can't start with that. But we can look at where you might go with it. And so at the very top of this page, we have the topmost level, the graduate level, I called it, just because it's a word. Don't take it too seriously. But the point is that these are difficult things. To be mindful while you're in the middle of a fight with your spouse. Can you imagine? How does that work? Arguing with a colleague? Falling in love? It sounds like a contradiction in terms. But think of it. Imagine the first time you fell in love, if you had been mindful, if you had been able to say to yourself, wow, my heart's pumping away there and I'm having all sorts of strange thoughts about this person who is like a goddess or a god. And you would actually see the way that you are creating this process of falling in love, that this is your way of interpreting what's going on. These are very, very powerful times to be mindful, and you will get there. But we have to start with lesser things. We have to start by developing that muscle of mindfulness. talking to a child, serving a client, hosting an event. These are less complicated. These are not caught up in the emotional turmoil of fighting or arguing or falling in love. These are relatively unemotional situations in which, with practice, you can become more mindful. And the very best sort of mindfulness is mindfulness with others, because this is empathy. And you can't give empathy without receiving the same feeling that the other person gets, which is of being connected, of caring, of being cared for, I should say, even if it's only by yourself. There is always some response to that. Mindfulness in dealing with others is an incredibly enriching experience, and probably the easiest of these examples which I gave, because these are only examples, is talking to your child, talking to your own child. When you sit down quietly, especially if the child's done something that needs to be corrected, how do you deal with that? Obviously, you don't shout and scream. You talk, you connect, you make the child understand that he or she is understood. You understand their pain. You understand why they acted out. And when you've communicated that to them, then everything opens up. And that's a process of mindfulness. You see, I know mindfulness is often presented as a mystical Buddhist practice from the Orient, which is 2,500 years old. But mindfulness is also a perfectly ordinary human mental capacity which has been around for hundreds of thousands of years. We all have the capacity to be mindful, and when we do things well, it's generally because we've had mindfulness in. You know what? I'm going to be very blunt. It's not generally, it's always, among other things, because there has been a strong element of mindfulness in there. Good things do not happen by accident. They happen because we're paying attention and because we have ethics. Watching all this unfold in your mind is the whole purpose, again, of mindfulness. I can't repeat it often enough. When you understand in your own mind what is going on, then you have a real opportunity to change. And you don't have to strategically plan your change. You simply have to see how your mind works, and naturally you will let go of the things which don't work and you'll develop the things which do. But it all depends on clarity. Now, at an intermediate level of active meditation, you can be driving a car or traveling on a bus or train or plane, standing in line at the post office or the bank. And these are relatively distracting situations because there's other stuff going on. But at the same time, you can take a few moments here and there to watch your breath, to center yourself, to stand squarely. Perhaps if you practice yoga or Tai Chi, you can watch your bodily stance. In these situations, we can grab a moment here. We can grab a minute there. These are opportunities. If you're a complete beginner, I would encourage you to start practicing mindfulness as you wash dishes or prepare food, slicing into vegetables, opening up an onion and looking at the incredible textures and shapes and diagrams inside. Quite beautiful. Or jogging, or even brushing your teeth. These are times in the day when normally we zone out. The mind just goes daydreaming, or we carry on thinking about whatever we were thinking of before, which is fair enough, but you can also be putting this time to good use. Toothbrushing, what does it take you, 2 or 3 minutes? That's a 2 or 3 minute meditation at the beginning or the end of the day. Pay very close attention as you brush. Going slowly helps, but it's not necessary, but it does help. And just notice the sensation of what you're doing. See the automaticity in your hand. Your hand very cleverly manipulates the toothbrush and gets into every nook and cranny of your mouth, around your teeth, every crevice. You don't have to think about it, but you can By being mindful, you can actually watch this and remember all those things that you learned about brushing teeth so many years ago, which are now completely integrated into your hand, to the extent that your mind doesn't even have to be involved. And that's the beauty of it. This is the great place to start mindfulness meditation, because your mind is completely free. Not only is it free, your body is busy, which sort of avoids the danger of boredom. It's actually interesting. Or it can be. It's all a matter of attitude. Every morning the sun rises. I open my door and I see it rising through the trees, and I see if it's going to be sunny or rainy. But some days, this morning was such a day, I opened the door and I looked at the sun, and I noticed that I just had a great appreciation for being alive. I was just so thankful to be here and so amazed that the sun rose and that I have the consciousness to appreciate it. And there's really nothing more to it than that. I don't need an explanation. Just to dwell for that brief moment in that amazing feeling of being for no particular reason. It's a mystery. It's a miracle. Call it what you want. You can call it a mystical experience if you like. The point is to be acutely aware. This is the highest experience we can have of life. On top of which, by practicing awareness in this way, by being increasingly mindful in an increasing variety of situations, we become extremely clear of mind. Things become simple. We let go of all sorts of patterns which normally we use to defend ourselves or rationalize our situation or make excuses. There comes a point where we don't need to make excuses anymore. We can actually accept who we are wholeheartedly. And that eliminates so much mental activity, so much of that mental chatter which is going on all the time when you sit there trying to meditate just goes away. It simply dissolves because you don't need it anymore. It happens naturally, but it doesn't happen without practice. It doesn't happen without a reason. The reason or the cause of that sort of mental clarity and that ability to see, to empathize, to resonate, that is a product of mindfulness. And it's a product of mindfulness that we practice every day. It has to be a daily practice. If it isn't, then we won't get stronger. I mean, 5 days a week is fine. But there has to be some structure to it. And when it comes to sitting meditation, and you tell me this, what sort of things do you come up with? What reasons pass through your mind to tell you that, well, I don't have time. Today I can't meditate. Please send me a note. I'd love to see that, and I'll read out a couple of them. I won't mention your names unless you want me to. And it's very important to see that, to understand. Because we want to meditate every day, and we can't sit, but we can practice active meditation. And there are certain things that you should set aside each day. I'd like you to pick one or two. Toothbrushing is a great one. It's a perfect start. And it's not like when you get to the graduate level, you won't be brushing your teeth anymore. You're still going to be brushing. You're still going to be practicing mindfulness. But because you do that, you are building a foundation which is going to lead you up here until the time comes when you're having the biggest fight of your life with your boss or with a colleague at work. And at the same time, you are absolutely clear in your mind of what's going on. There's a part of you standing back and watching this and seeing it. And you may be more or less emotionally involved, but you are getting a sense of how this is playing out. And you're also, more importantly, getting a sense of where you have choices and how this situation is not happening to you, but you are taking part in it. You are contributing. You are part of its cause. You're constructing this situation. These are the fruits of mindfulness. This is why we meditate. It's not just to feel calm for a few minutes. It's to really develop this deep clarity and this simplicity of mind which enables us to deal with the most complicated, overwhelming situations without becoming flustered. It's great when it works. And it doesn't work all the time because we're human beings. Some days it'll be better than others. Will you ever get to the point where you never get flustered, you never lose your temper, you never feel negative, you never miss a moment's meditation? Well, maybe, but I sort of doubt it. I don't really believe in perfection, but I do believe in striving for it. I really do. Now, before we go any further, I'd like to look at some of these questions. So, here's a question from somebody. I don't know if he wants him to mention his name. I've been practicing for 2.5 years. 1 month ago, I was laid off. 3 weeks ago, I attended a 10-day Vipassana retreat. Vipassana is a very intensive form of meditation, and the 10-day retreats they can be quite life-changing. I've been back in the world for 2 weeks looking for work, and the past 2 weeks have been the most difficult to practice formal meditation ever. I expected that after a period of intensive practice, my formal practice would become more stable. Instead, it's become more difficult. Okay. All right, I understand. This is one of the downsides of the formal meditation. If you're a monk, if you live in a monastery and that's your permanent residence, then fine. Formal meditation will work really well for you. But if you're like the rest of us living in the world, then the trouble with formal meditation, even if you do an intensive 10-day course, is that it's very, very dependent on the situation. And when you leave that situation, when you leave the nice quiet place where all the food and everything else you need is provided for you, and you have to deal with all the complications of life again, then it's very hard to keep track of that level of concentration and intensity that happens naturally when you're in a retreat. So this can be very discouraging. It can certainly be very confusing. And your formal meditation when you do sit down is not going to be of the same quality it was when you were in retreat. It simply can't be because the conditions have changed. So it comes down to a decision. Do you want to spend the rest of your life in retreat, or do you want to actually bring meditation into an ordinary life? And if that's what you want to do, then this is the way to do it. You really need to cultivate the active meditation as well as the formal meditation. And this goes for all of us, you've got to be patient. This doesn't happen quickly. It happens very slowly, and it doesn't deliver the things that you expect. It tends to deliver the things that you need. I guess that sounds a little bit cryptic, but that's been my experience. I always thought that meditation would make me very peaceful and calm. And it hasn't particularly done that, but it has made me able to accept my energetic side, to understand the way my mind works, even if it doesn't always do what I want it to. So acceptance is a big one. There are so many things I could say about it. Okay, somebody else here has an excuse for meditating. I don't have the capacity physically or mentally. usually because I'm feeling terribly exhausted, but it seems like part of me doesn't want to change my experience or is scared to go there. Yes. Yeah, who can't relate to that? I know I can. I don't have the capacity physically or mentally. Yeah, you know, I get mad when meditation teachers say, okay, now close your eyes and place your attention on the breath and don't be distracted. Let go of all thoughts and feelings and focus exclusively on the breath. Now, I don't really get mad, but I always have second thoughts about that because as far as I'm concerned, that's impossible. You can't do that. The brain doesn't work like that. However, when we try and do that, we discover things about ourselves that we wouldn't have found out any other way. So it does make sense. There is a reason to be told that we should do that. But on the other hand, when we discover that we can't do it, it can be incredibly disappointing. It can be devastating. And I've seen this so many times. I can't say it enough. People blame themselves. And that's a terrible thing. I can't meditate. I'm not made out for this. That is absolutely not true. As I said before, mindfulness is a natural state of mind that we all have, that we can all make use of. We can all put it to good use. We can all benefit from cultivating it. But it takes time. And it's not what you expect. Your thoughts don't stop. What we're actually doing is we're making a sort of a pact with our thoughts. Well, okay, you can come and go, but you don't carry me away. I'm going to stay here and watch. And I'm going to see all the thoughts that come and go through my head, but I'm not going to get attached to them. This is more the sort of thing that we're moving towards with mindfulness. But it takes time. But very important at the beginning to be patient with yourself. Even more important, to make friends with yourself. Make friends with yourself. If you are not going to support yourself in this endeavor, then who is? You can't go blaming yourself. You can't go saying, I'm no good, I can't do this. It's been done before. Lots of people do it. Millions of people have been doing it for thousands of years, maybe even longer. I don't know. But I do know that you can do it. And if you think you can't, that's got more to do with your thinking than the reality of your situation. How does mindfulness help in dealing with yet another physical injury that's keeping me from doing the things I love to do and being productive in the way I wish to be? Well, mindfulness gives you a sense of clarity, which enables you to judge these situations. What can I do? I have to be realistic. I have a physical injury or a sickness. I witness this every day because my wife Caroline suffers from MS and she's limited in many ways. But what she does is she looks for the things which don't limit her, and that's where she puts her energy. She's a wonderful coach and she loves doing her work. She loves working with her clients. And it means so much to her that that's where she puts her energy. And although the troubling nature of her illness is still there, it doesn't go away, she's gaining so much fulfillment and enrichment from this other part of her life that it becomes manageable. Mindfulness can also help with pain, with the perception of pain. This is more complicated, but it is possible to use mindfulness to help with accepting pain. Here's another one. Excuses I use for not meditation. It's always so noisy. It's so messy in the flat. I have to tidy up. I must just finish this book. Yeah, there's always something we must just do, isn't there? Just got to finish just that one email. Oh yeah, and then I have to make that work before I can actually send the email. It's terrible. The pace of life today is nuts. It's unbelievable. And we're all suffering from it. And it's not going to change. And we need it. We can't walk away from computers and smartphones. And we need them to work, to exist, to make a living. And if you don't use them at all, if you are beyond all that, if you've got so much money you don't need to work, still, by avoiding the technology, you're gradually putting yourself out of touch. We have to deal with all this stuff, but we also have to meditate. So when you're tidying the flat, well, tidying the flat, how hard is that? How much mind do you need to tidy the flat? Isn't that a great opportunity to meditate? All you have to do is slow it down just a tiny bit and just watch yourself as you do the tidying. You watch your hands, you watch your feet, you feel your body moving, you see your mind making decisions. This goes in the drawer, this goes in the garbage. Mindfulness is simply being attentive to what's going on. That's all it is. Let's take another look at that definition. And there you go. Conscious, present attention to immediate experience. You're tidying the flat. You're tidying the flat. Your immediate experience is doing. You're doing stuff. So be conscious, be present, and attentive to it. Just pay attention. You're strengthening that mindfulness muscle. That's all that counts. You keep strengthening it. You see more clearly as you go. And this picture, by the way, this is one of my favorite pictures. I love this because this wolf is just the image of attentiveness. He's extremely, exquisitely attentive to his experience. There doesn't seem to be anything else on his mind. Why would there be? Who knows? He might go through. That's melting. That's a lake covered in ice, which is covered with a layer of melting water. It's presumably spring. You would be attentive too, wouldn't you? I know I would. You might recognize this slide. It's in my Overwhelmed webinar, which if you're enjoying this, you might be interested in downloading. It's a set of 5 modules, 5 one-hour modules about being overwhelmed and how to overcome it. And it's presented very much in the same format as this webinar. And I'll direct you to that at the end of the presentation. So let's go back to where we were. Here's another excuse for not meditating. I'm already so good at it. I love that one. That's great. Yeah, it doesn't matter if you're good or you're bad. You still got to practice. Makes no difference. Okay. Amen. This is from Wendy. Amen. I've always believed this, that there's no need to sit in a special position. No need at all. That's not to say it can't be helpful. Sitting in a special position, in a lotus position, it really does, if you're good at it, if it's comfortable for you, it actually enables you to forget mostly about your body, about how you should sit, what to do with your hands, what to do with your feet and so on. When you're sitting in a chair, there's this sort of awkwardness which completely disappears. So there are advantages, but necessary? Absolutely not. If you have to choose, active meditation is the way to go, because active meditation is going to make a difference in your life right now. It's something you can do without changing anything in your schedule. You have to do these things every day, whatever it is. Whatever it is you have to do, toothbrushing, washing dishes, preparing food, jogging, working out of any sort, practicing yoga or Tai Chi, just going for a walk, walking the dog, digging a hole in the garden. I mean, how many simple tasks do we do in the day that can be turned to meditation? Use your imagination. Don't try and do them all. Pick one or two, just so that your focus is there, so you remember. Toothbrushing. If necessary, tie a little note around your toothbrush and just say, be mindful, so that when you pick it up, you got that little memory jog, and you brush your teeth and you're very, very aware of it, and you're watching your body, you're watching your mind, you're feeling how it feels, and you're strengthening that muscle. You are meditating. Okay, what I want for you all, this is what I want. I want you to have the pride of being able to say to yourself, I am a meditator. Not of saying, I wish I could meditate. I love meditating, but I don't do it enough. I know I should meditate, but I can't. I want you to have the pride of being a meditator, and you can do that simply by meditating in any of these situations. Every day. Make a point. This is not effortless. I said you could do it without changing your schedule. I didn't say you could do it without making effort. You have to make effort. You have to set your motivation. You have to determine, this is what I'm going to do. I am a meditator and I am going to live a meditative lifestyle. That's very important. Everyone talks about losing their ego, but really what's important here is to develop a healthy ego. Something which is supportive, something which is friendly to yourself, which doesn't do this, I'm no good, I can't do it, it's beyond me, but really says, I can do it, I do it. This is who I am. I am a meditator. If you like affirmations, there's a good one for you. Say it every day. I am a meditator. Okay. Now, why isn't it going forward? So we have a summary here. 2 types of meditation. This is really the point that I wanted to make in this webinar today. There's formal meditation and there's active meditation. Okay, formal meditation brings your mindful attention to sitting, walking, and I've included these other 3, eating, toilet, and cleaning. These are the activities of a monk, a Buddhist monk actually, which, as you probably know, I was a Buddhist monk. And when you're in retreat, as this person who was in Vipassana, where are we now? That would be Matthew. Matthew, you practiced Vipassana for these 10 days, and you were taught, I presume, I'm sure, to be mindful of everything you were doing, not just when you were sitting down. And when you're in an intensive retreat, this pretty well sums up everything you do. You sit, you walk, you go to the toilet, you eat, you clean. There's nothing else left to do. Everything else is provided for you. In reality, for us in a busy life, even if we do meditate formally, if you have a room in your house where you go every morning for a few minutes, you're going to focus mostly on sitting, maybe also on walking. But you can also try and bring mindfulness to these other activities too. In fact, they really, I suppose, belong in the active meditation section. But they are part of the formal descriptions of how to meditate. Now, the active meditation, as you saw on the previous page, we have 4 levels. So I'm describing them the other way around now, starting at the bottom. Beginner. As a beginner, you focus on automated tasks like tying your shoelaces, buttoning your shirt, chopping an onion. Automated tasks that the body can perform with minimal decision making. So you make the decision to do this, and then as you're doing it, you practice mindfulness. Slightly harder are the semi-automated tasks that require an occasional intervention. Things like driving. Most of the time, if you're driving on a highway, for example, as opposed to on busy city streets, much of the time your mind is relatively at rest. You don't have to make immediate decisions. You can be particularly attentive. Turn off the radio, turn off the CD, pay attention to what you're doing. Watch your breath. and watch yourself also being completely attentive to what's going on around you, which of course you need to do because you're driving a vehicle, which can be very dangerous. But the lesson here is that mindfulness is not withdrawal. On the contrary, it's complete engagement. This is the biggest thing I'd like to leave with you, that mindfulness is not withdrawal. Meditation is not withdrawal. It is an engagement with the world around you. And it starts within your body. First of all, you start engaging with your own body, understanding and appreciating your own feelings, your thoughts, your bodily situation. As you get better at this, you can move to more complex tasks that require your full engagement. So when you're working on a project or developing a computer program or teaching a class of children or dealing with clients, these are things which really require all your attention. But at the same time, you can be mindful. This is a time to practice mindfulness. Remember, there's an aspect of mindfulness which is a valid multitasking. In fact, I was taught, this is the way I was taught by my teachers, that when you sit to meditate in formal meditation, you put 90% of your attention on the breath or on the object of meditation, but you keep 10% in reserve. That 10% is like a policeman checking up to make sure that you don't get lost, that you don't lose your attention. So when you're involved in a complex task, when you're dealing with a project or you're in a business meeting and lots of things are happening, the idea here is simply to keep your level of mental activity at a manageable pace and to use that mindful policeman to understand not simply what's going on outside of you, but what thought processes and emotions you are processing and which you are contributing to this scenario and how that affects you back. This is an advanced practice. It's not something that will come easily, but you may find yourself, if you even think that you can do it, try it. You've got absolutely nothing to lose, and you will gain insight. You will see something, you will understand something, and this will not just lead you towards greater mindfulness, it will inspire you, it will motivate you. And the motivation is so important because all of this stuff is work and it's swimming against the stream. This is not the way that society or life encourages us to go. We have to make effort to be this way, to be mindful, and to not be on some sort of autopilot. At the graduate level, there are emotionally charged situations when you're in an emotional argument, when you're angry. And I have to admit that I have had moments like this, and I think everybody does. They're not easy to come by, but when you're engaged in all that emotion, there can be a moment of clarity, of look what I'm doing, look where my mind is at, look where I've placed myself. And even if the momentum of that emotion is so much that you can't stop it and you can't change it, the fact is that you have seen it. And that one simple fact that you have seen it in real time as it was happening and not simply regretted it the next day, but you've seen it as it's happening, that will gradually flourish. That will become a bigger gap that you will cultivate. You're developing a gap. I'm sorry, I'm not finding the right words. There is a gap between stimulus and response. When somebody pushes your trigger and you explode, and you see that you've exploded, if you recognize what's going on in your mind, but you still don't have the ability to stop doing it, you have seen it, and that will contribute the next time to you being able to see it just a fraction of a moment sooner. And gradually you build up that gap, you make it a little wider, and you get to the point where you can have a choice. You create a moment of free will. And then you can choose to not behave like that. Or maybe it is the right way to behave. Sometimes people need to be shouted at. The point is, it becomes your choice, not just an automatic feature of your life. This is the real power of mindfulness. Well, it's been a pleasure. I'm sorry if the technology was a little iffy. This is my first time with this program, but there will be more. I'm looking forward to doing more. There's much more you can do. There are the daily meds, which I think many of you have already tried, free downloadable meditations from the website, but we also have more in-depth offerings for you. As I mentioned before, there's the webinar, Being Overwhelmed and How to Overcome It. You can download that from the website. We also have a live webinar coming up soon, How to Let Go of Self-Doubt, Gain Perspective and Move On with Your Life. And this is a subject very dear to my heart because for me, having been a Buddhist and being still quite an avid reader of Buddhism, I think that the Buddha's main task, his main purpose was to develop self-reliance. And so self-doubt, you may not think that it's a big issue for you, but I think it's an issue for all of us. And I think once you've gotten beneath the surface and see it, then it's really worth spending time on it and understanding how it can be uprooted and what the results will be. And for the third offering, of course, I do one-on-one coaching with individuals. Do this with beginners and advanced. I've been doing this for a few years now. And it's based on a conversation that we would have. If you're interested in doing this, just contact me. We'll set up a 1-hour meeting for no charge and we'll talk about what we might do. Basically, it's about getting past things which have you stuck. And I'm not here to come up with a solution. I can't give you the answers, but what I can do is help you find your own answers. So you can find all of that on youandyourmind.com. I hope some of it is of interest to you. I hope you'll stay in touch. It's been a pleasure talking to you, and I hope to see you again. Thanks very much. Bye-bye.